Welcome everybody to the live webinar here at BINA. Today's question is, do you need God in your life to be a good person? Do you need to believe in God to be a good and moral human being? The truth is that we need to split this question into two parts. Number one, do you need God to be a good person? Number two, is being a good person all that there is to life? Is that the highest goal that a person should strive for? So even if the answer to the first part of the question is no, you don't need God to be a good person, maybe the purpose of a human being is something loftier and higher than just being a good person, that for that lofty purpose, you do need to believe in God in order to reach it. So let's deal with first things first. Do you need God to be a good person? But first, whenever studying a question, you first need to define the terminology in what we are discussing. So first of all, what do I mean by a good person? I don't know if this is the only definition, but for our discussion, this is what we mean when I say a good person. A good person is somebody who doesn't kill, who doesn't steal, who is moral in their relationships. But obviously, it's not only somebody who stays away from these negative things, but also does good things, is kind to other people, does good things in their life for the betterment of society and other human beings and other creatures in general. The question is, do you need to believe in God in order to do all of those things? The answer is that short term, not necessarily, but long term, yes. Meaning, on a personal level, a person can be a perfectly good person without believing in God. There are many, if not most, atheists, people who do not believe in God, who are very good people and do all of those things that we described above and stay away from all the negative things that we spoke about before. However, on a societal level, in a long term, to ensure that these values are eternal and will stay under any circumstance, for that you need to believe in God. This is not a proof for the existence of God. This is just explaining why belief in God serves the purpose of making sure that society stays good. To ensure that moral and good values will continue, you need a God. Because if we only rely on human conscience and human intellect to guide us to be good people, although most of the time human conscience will lead us to be good and society will be good, but it can and has the potential to be terrible. There have been societies in the not so distant past that using their human conscience has led to mass genocide. When there is a God, then these values are non-negotiable. The creator of heaven and earth decides how his creation, how earth should run, and no human creation can decide otherwise. Now, this also works on the other side of the coin as well. If relying only on good human conscience, then there are times actually that we are supposed to do bad things, but I won't, because my conscience doesn't let me. For example, if there is a malicious group of people that are bombing innocent people, then that group needs to be destroyed, needs to be murdered, needs to be eliminated, needs to be taken away from the world. For the sake of goodness, for the sake of keeping a moral society. Sometimes, when just relying on our own conscience, we have misplaced mercy. When the correct thing to do in this circumstance is to act without mercy, maybe my human conscience will not let me do something that seems to be not good. That is why we need a God to decide when yes and when not. God says, "Habo lahargecha hashkem lahargoi." If somebody comes to attack you, if somebody or a group of people is a danger to society, then we need to eliminate them. Hashkem lahargoi, you get up to kill them, to get rid of them. It's interesting that, for example, dealing with the land of Israel in many times in the past years, when they have been threatened by terrible terrorist groups such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and the like, and they have defended themselves, they have been condemned by the media, by college campuses, and other people. Now, these people may be very well-meaning, but it's just interesting to point out that generally speaking, again, not in every case, there are exceptions, but generally speaking, these groups that come out to condemn a moral society such as the land of Israel, who are just defending themselves, are generally godless. They are more secular. They do not believe in bringing God into society, such as the media and college campuses, which over the past few years have become increasingly secular. When there's no God and you only rely on your conscience, you may be very well-meaning, but sometimes you might have misplaced mercy, when in fact, in this circumstance, it is demanded for us to do something that's actually not so good, and to eliminate those bad people. Now, even on a personal level, sometimes we need to be good because we are commanded so, not because of our conscience. For example, if a person has parents that weren't the best parents, if I only rely on my feelings and my conscience, maybe I would think that I don't need to honor them so much because they weren't the greatest parents out there. However, when honoring your parents based upon a command from God, honor your father and mother, one of the 10 commandments, that will be under any circumstance. Now, of course, just to point out that this doesn't mean that a child needs to stay with abusive parents. Of course, if it's a danger in any way, emotionally or physically, to a child, that is a different circumstance. And of course, a personal mentor should be consulted in such a case. But generally speaking, although it might not fit with my feelings, I will honor them anyway, because that is what God has commanded me to do. So in summary, yes, you can be a good person without God. It is definitely possible and happens a lot of times. But not necessarily will it be in all circumstances, and for sure in a general sense, when you're discussing society and long-term keeping good values and moral values going, for that, in order to ensure that the good values will continue, yeah, it could continue also without believing in God, but in order to ensure that that will be the case, we need to believe in God. Now to the next question. Is the ultimate goal of a human being to be a good person? Is there any loftier goal than that? Do you need God to reach that loftier goal? The answer is that, of course, first and foremost, we need to be good people. Without being a good person, there's nothing to talk about. But when we reach that, and we are good people, we have actually not reached our full potential of what a human being can accomplish. You see, a person can be good, but in an area which I am comfortable with. Some people excel in having guests sleep over in their house, but to give from their own money, that they find very difficult. Some people will give millions of dollars to charity, but they just feel uncomfortable with somebody coming into their home and invading their privacy. Now, would you call such a person a bad person? Of course not. They're amazing people. They have given millions of dollars to charity. So they are good people. But at the end of the day, they haven't gone out of their comfort zone. They haven't done something which is beyond their nature. They haven't gone beyond themselves, out of themselves. A person, and specifically a person, not an animal, has the ability to go beyond their nature, to do good in an area that is contrary to what I am about, that I am not comfortable with. To achieve this purpose, you must be connected to a power which transcends myself, a power higher than any nature, and that is God. When we connect to God, we will hopefully not only be good people, but be able to have the ability to go totally beyond ourselves, because we are connected to a transcendent existence, which is God. We learn this lesson from the first Jew, Avraham Avinu, Abraham, our forefather, who led a life of tremendous kindness. He had guests all the time, so much so that even after he was commanded to circumcise himself and he was in terrible pain, he waited outside his tent in the incredible heat. Maybe there might be a guest that is passing by. He was tested with 10 difficult tests, and he passed all of them. But when it came to the 10th test, which was when God commanded him to take his only son, Yitzchak, and to sacrifice him on the altar, after he had passed that test, and of course he didn't end up actually sacrificing him, but after he was ready to do that, and he showed that he was ready to do that, God tells him, Ato yodaiti ki yirei elokim ato. Now I know that you are God-fearing. Hold on. What happened to him having guessed for 99 years? What happened to all the other tests that he went through? Why specifically this 10th test does it prove that he is God-fearing? And the answer is that the pasuk doesn't say that now I know that you're a good person. He was a good person before that. That is 100% true. But he wasn't God-fearing. Because everything that he did till then was part of his nature. Avraham Avinu was born with a nature to do kindness. It was natural for him to have guests. That was part of his character. That's what he was all about. When he was put to the test and commanded to do something which seemed to be cruel, contrary to his nature, that proved that he was God-fearing. Now, just of course to point out that God had never intended that Avraham Avinu should actually go and do this cruel act of sacrificing his son. That was not the point at all. The point was to bring out within Avraham the readiness to go against his character. So again, of course, the goal wasn't to actually sacrifice Yitzchak. God forbids us to kill people and to sacrifice children. That is something that pagan worshippers used to do, and Jews, of course, are commanded not to do that. But the point of this test was to bring out within Avraham Avinu this ability to go beyond his nature. And when he did that, God says, now I know that you're not only a good person, but you have reached the ultimate purpose of a human being, to be God-fearing, to go out of oneself totally, to break your character, to go beyond your nature. We are Abraham's children. We have that power to not only be good people, of course we need to be good people, but to not only be good people, to transcend the self, and we have the ability to go beyond our nature. We have the power, let's use it. Have a good day.